Marcus,
Sean,
how's your trade going?
how's your trade going?
Trade's going good, dude. I got the same trade as always. Buy
Any
Bitcoin.
trades lately?
Any what?
Any recent trades?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Stacking at these low prices. Stacking. And I hope these low prices continue. Get all those altcoins out of here. And Bitcoin only. Rolling, 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 rolling. Keep these low prices rolling right now. So, welcome everybody. This is Bitcoiner's Guide, the show that we wish we would have had when we first started learning about Bitcoin. So we made it for you. We're your host, Big Sean Harris and Plan Marcus in the building. Timestamp, price stamp. Today is currently Monday, June 27th. Dang, it's getting late in the summer already. 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time exactly. The price of Bitcoin is 20,000 and some change, down about 1% over the last 24 hours. So Bitcoin's doing its thing as usual. It's doing what everyone thought it wouldn't do. There's some people, some bears out there saying they thought they knew this is what it was going to do. Marcus is one of those bears. No, I'm just joking. He's not one of those bears. But he is a bear. But maybe he's a rational bear.
We're all bears. Everybody's too bearish on Bitcoin. I got that from Gigi. He says nobody's bullish enough on Bitcoin.
We're all bears. It's true. We are all bears on Bitcoin. Even who's the most bullish person out there?
The most bullish person out there. I'd go for Gigi.
He's a bear.
All right, I'll go for Big Sean.
Gigi, you're a bear. Gigi listens to the show every week, so if you're not listening, you're a bear too.
You're missing
out. If
out.
You are listening, you might be a bear.
So what has you bullish these days, Sean? What are you most bullish about right now?
Me, I'm most bullish.
Bitcoin.
I'm most bullish about these lending platforms, aka lending scams, falling by the wayside. I'm bullish on that because there's just it just made Bitcoin a speculation instead of savings. So getting into that, we wanted to share today the Bitcoiner's Guide tip of the week, brought to you by mfmerch.com, the best merch in Bitcoin. So what we wanted to talk about today for the Bitcoiner's Guide tip of the week was we see all these platforms, these crypto lending platforms that are going by the wayside. We've seen exchanges fall away like Mt. Gox in the past. So we wanted to reiterate the age-old saying, not your keys, not your coins. And the reason why is because a lot of people have given up control of their keys and of their coins to make a little bit of yield on their coins. But the issue is it's a fiat game. This is the whole thing that we had with fiat. So we're seeing these bank runs, quote unquote bank runs happening with these crypto lending platforms where people will store their Bitcoin or whatever else, whatever other crypto they may have. And then these crypto lending platforms, they get over leveraged, the price of Bitcoin drops, and then they end up getting liquidated. And then they tell people, we don't have your Bitcoin. And so that's essentially a bank run. There's no longer bank runs that happen anymore because those are things like the 1800s. Then they had the Federal Reserve, which became the lender of last resort. And that made it so money was centralized by the state. And you had the FDIC insurance. So instead of putting risk in one bank, now you had risk in the whole system. And that's what we're seeing today is a very risky system. So the whole reason why, one of the biggest reasons why you buy Bitcoin is because it's unconfiscatable, it's uncensorable in its transactions, and that you, the person, the peer, you control the money. So if you don't have full control of your money, is it actually your money? That's the big question. And that's what we see with banking today. People think that their money is in their bank account, but it's really just an IOU.
Yeah, I'm
So-
drawing a blank here.
So why do you, okay, how about this? Why don't you keep your Bitcoin like on exchanges and stuff? Why do you hold your own keys? What's the point of it for you?
No, I completely agree with that. The thing is with Bitcoin, and this discussion about like these lending platforms, right? People will like come back with that and say, what's wrong with lending? There's nothing immoral or nothing wrong about lending. It's always used to be that way. You put your money in the bank and the bank will take that money and lend it out to other people, right? So if I want to lend money and I need some cash right now and I want to borrow like $1,000, and I promise to pay the bank back like over a period of 6 months or whatever, and I'll pay them back monthly with a little bit extra, which is the interest, and then the bank can share that interest with me, with the other person on the other side who lended the bank that money, right? That's how I grew up, at least understanding of how like a bank works. So what's wrong with that? And I think in essence, that might not be a problem moving forward, as long as that is literally what is going on. And I think like the bank lending it out again to try and make a better return should be really simple, because that bank should then have like this window where people who need to lend money can go, and at what interest rate do they get to lend that money, right? And then the bank can never promise the other window a higher interest rate than that. Actually, it'll need to be lower, because otherwise they won't be able to make a profit. But I guess what was going on right now with Celsius specifically, at least that's my hunch. I mean, I don't have any inside information, and I just read what I see on Twitter. But these guys probably expected Bitcoin to also go up to 100K, or maybe not 100K, but they didn't expect it to go this low in any case.
Yeah.
And probably a bunch of other coins that they were like trying to invest in, or maybe like outpace Bitcoin with, or whatever. They might have been too optimistic on those numbers too, and now they couldn't pay back the people just take risks with the money, and now it's gone. And you as a if you put up like your money there with Celsius, you're even like, you're not getting your money back. There's like all these inside investors who will get their money back first. You've got Goldman Sachs trying to like buy up your Bitcoin now.
Yes.
And it was really funny, because I saw like this big Bitcoin OG posting about it on Twitter, and he got this email because he has an account there, and he says it's not much, but it's still. But he shared an email where his weekly rewards of roughly 4,000 US dollars, as a weekly rewards on the interest he was receiving.
Mm-hmm.
That email said he just got his rewards. However, withdrawals are still turned off. And he posted something like with a question, "Oh, I wonder if we're still going to get those rewards." It's like,
Yeah.
what do you think? Is he going to get those rewards?
Oh yeah. He'll get them. He'll get the rewards. It'll come in.
Yeah.
It'll come in a lesson well learned. That's the rewards he's gonna get.
Yeah. It was like with Bernie Madoff. He would like make statements to all his lenders, showing like, okay, it's another plus 10% this year, or plus 30 or plus 50% this year. Just like last year, here are the numbers, while the numbers have no real connection to the actual assets that they're holding and the risk that they're taking. And that's why you keep Bitcoin off of exchange, because when you hold your Bitcoin, you can spin up your own node, look at those UTXOs, look at your Bitcoin sitting there in your address with your keys that only you control. And you know, there's no funny business going on. You know, you're the only one controlling those coins, and there's nobody that can relend those coins and do something stupid with it. Even, you know, the most trustworthy bank can fail ultimately. And once it's in their safe and you're not holding the money, if something bad happens, then yeah, you're in line, you know. And if
Yeah.
you're like me and you're just a pleb, you have no extra access or whatever, and you just get screwed. So that's the beauty of Bitcoin. You hold
Yeah.
your keys, nobody can touch them, take them away from you. And the price can do all it wants, but nobody's taking away my Bitcoin. Simple.
I mean, if you look at those platforms like the Luna that went down, Celsius, you know, people were saying that it was risk-free, basically risk-free yield. You have something like BlockFi, who was actually giving you like 6% in annual interest on your Bitcoin when they first started doing it, and then they just kept dropping the interest and kept dropping it. So they almost got you in because like, oh, 6% interest on my Bitcoin. If you have a good amount of Bitcoin, you know, you can put it on there and maybe you live off of that, right? So, and then out of nowhere, then it's like, you know, 0.1% interest on the Bitcoin that you put in there. And another thing that they do is that they do Bitcoin, they do collateralized lending. So you can put your Bitcoin on the website and you have to over collateralize it, the loan. So if you want a loan for $10,000, you have to post $20,000 Bitcoin to get a loan. And you get it out in fiat. And then it's a year-long loan. But the issue is, say you get a loan out, you don't have the $10,000 back yet to pay back for this for the Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's at $20,000. So you have one Bitcoin that's locked up in a BlockFi, and you don't have the money to pay back the loan yet. And then you see all this stuff happening. What do you do when there's no way for you to get your Bitcoin back other than paying off the loan? But you had planned on paying the loan back in, say, 9 months time, but now all these things are breaking. So I think a lot of these issues are going on where people think, hey, there's nothing wrong with this, you know, where they don't realize that, yeah, these things worked in the bull market. Are they going to last through these major dips, quote unquote bear markets that we're in? That's what you don't know. But what you do know is if you hold your own keys, you don't play any fiat games, you use Bitcoin as a savings technology, and then you wait for 10 years, Bitcoin's going to be at, you know, over $1 million. You're going to be glad that you didn't lose any Bitcoin in a Celsius lockup. You're going to be glad you didn't lose any Bitcoin in a Mt. Gox shamble and or in a BlockFi, whatever ends up happening with BlockFi. So these are the things that can happen that you don't foresee necessarily when you give up control of your keys. And the whole reason of getting Bitcoin is to gain back the sovereignty over your own money.
So you have an official prediction of Bear Sean Harris saying that in 10 years, Bitcoin is going to be $1 million.
Over $1 million. I am also a bear.
Haven't you learned not to mention price and dates in one sentence anymore?
Yes, I have. I have learned that.
I can see Bitcoin sitting under $1 million in 10 years. How about that? I could see that as well.
Yeah. You're really a bear. But you're realist. And you know what? You're always on point with your predictions. So I'm gonna stick with it.
No, it's not a prediction.
I would
my prediction range is wider than the stock to flow model of Stanford.
it's gonna get more volatile.
It's gonna be between 0 and infinity. It's an all or nothing game, you know. And how fast we're gonna get there, we'll see. There's a lot to happen still. But I
Yes.
mean, honestly, right? It kind of bugs me a little bit because everybody is in this like losing and like like this grumpy mood, and like
What?
there's like less activity on Twitter and
Who's
stuff,
grumpy? Are you grumpy?
No, like you can just taste the sentiment, like in just in my feed and in the chat rooms. It's just like there's a little mood. People are a little bit moody, and they're like, but
You know who's
and at the same time, like there's a lot of stuff that's not being said. A lot of people are like just shutting up. Like there's like this taboo on saying like, okay, I sold because I tried to cut out like some of these losses, right? But I mean, look at what the price did. There's a lot of people that sold out there. Otherwise, the price wouldn't have dropped like this. So that's the fact. Um, but another thing, which
they
is
deserve to
which is more
sell? They
important,
deserve
is
to
that
sell.
everybody is focusing on like loss. Well, look at the freaking bottoms, man. It's like 2 years ago, the bottom was what, like just under 4K. you
Yeah.
know right now we're like, okay, we don't know, like we need to see like new highs before you can call this a bottom, because who knows, it might go down first. But we're
It's
at
under just
20,
under
we're at like
20K.
$20,000 right now. It's like
Yeah.
almost a 10x. So just focus on those freaking bottoms, draw a line through that. And who the hell is losing right now? I mean, there's so many people that I see complaining and whining that I know have been stacking all throughout 2018, 19, 20, 21, all the way up to now. So, they're up. They're up, maybe not by the by the amounts they've tasted or experienced, or could have been if they sold at the right moment, all that stuff. So I understand people are, that's a strong emotion of losing. But at the same time, Bitcoin is winning. It's doing
Yeah.
exactly as advertised. There's more people coming in every year with each wave, with each bull run. There's like this influx of people doing shitcoinery, doing Bitcoin, losing money. Some will, run away, never come back, but a lot of them will just pull out their money, look at this thing a little bit more, but they're interested now. They're looking at, and there's this group of people that just become Bitcoin maximalists in that period of time and are now like stacking their asses off. And we're building towards this next, like it's gonna fill up again. And I think it's gonna accelerate, to be honest. So there you go. That's a bullish thing.
Bullish take from
Yeah,
this. I would look.
yeah.
Here's the thing. Who's sad right now? People that have a low time preference, or people that have a fat stack Bitcoin. Those are the people that are sad. If you have, if you're like, dude, I actually had a goal. Like me, I'm like, I had a goal and I still haven't been able to get it, a stacking goal. This is great because now I have more time to hit this goal. I thought it was running up like everyone else did, way past 100,000. And I'm like, I can maybe get one more coin for the rest of my life. And now I'm looking at it like, dude, maybe I can get a couple more coins if prices stay this way until the halving, which I don't think they will. I think it'll hit some equilibrium closer to the all-time high before the halving. That's another subject. Um, but if it stays at 20K for the next for the next 2 years before the halving, you know who's happy about this? Class of 2021 Bitcoiners that are orange pilled, class of 2022 Bitcoiners that are orange pilled, class of 2023 Bitcoiners that aren't even minted yet. They're happy about this price being this low, and they don't even know that they're happy yet. Like, though, that is what is, those are the people that are happy. Imagine being class of 2023, finally figuring out what Bitcoin is, and Bitcoin's sitting at 220,000. Well, what do you do then? You get 1/5 of a coin, like, which is better than nothing. It's much better than nothing, way better than nothing. But it's when it's lower like this, it almost drives more pleb adoption, which I really like, and it gets me a chance to get to a higher stacking goal. So I think there's a lot of good things about the price being this low. And so what? Like, so what? If people around you think you're stupid, they think you're dumb, the media thinks we're idiots and that we don't know what we're talking about. Okay, well, reality doesn't care. reality is going to figure out again that you can't print money to infinity, and that Bitcoin is the only absolute scarce thing out there. So while everyone else is figuring that out, I'll be stacking Bitcoin and trying to hit my stacking goals.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's I don't know, but you know that moment, I think it was sometime when it really clicked, like when my conviction just went from like a lukewarm to like, oh my God, this is like, it just, it's like one, how do you say that? Like this mind explosion after another when it like all started clicking. It was like, holy shit. I think Michael Saylor also described this moment, like how he went about it. Like he woke up and he was like, oh, I need to get as much as I can before like the rest of the world figures this out, right?
Yes.
And then you go like all in, all at once, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, like this is going to take a bit longer than that, But I think most Bitcoin maximalists had that moment where it's like, holy fuck, like this thing is going to go, and then it's like and why is it not happening right away? Why is like not everybody buying right now, right? It's like, I can see it, like how come like the rest of the world doesn't see it, right? How come everybody's not buying right now? And yeah, for some reason it's I guess Bitcoin is a little bit complicated still for people to just grasp, and there's all this FUD and things that are holding it back. But eventually the number of people that do have that keeps growing. And I don't know, when that hit, all of a sudden I had like hope. When they say like Bitcoin is hope, it's I don't know, I felt like a millionaire, like, and trust me, like I'm just like a pleb, like I'm no millionaire by far, but it's like just at that moment in time, I was like, whoa, like I feel like, hey, I've got enough Bitcoin now, and it's gonna take you. It's something you feel you can rely on into the future, like that you can actually, even with a price not going up,
Yeah.
you can actually just like put money to the side and it's going to retain its purchasing power at the very least. And it's so impossible not to see the price of Bitcoin going up. So you can't be blind for that as well. But that, if you just see that, it just gives you like so much comfort and rest towards the future. And it allows you to like rethink your future instead of like, oh my God, I have to climb like this corporate ladder and I'm going to have to like, like depending on everybody's age and like life goals and all that kind of stuff. But when you're in a place where you're still like going from paycheck to paycheck, and you've got all these plans of like traveling and all these dreams you want to do in your life, maybe like raise a family and send them to college or get a bigger house or whatever it is for you, get that boat or a motorcycle or whatever it is. It's like, and you're just like working at the end of the month, everything's finished, and like prices just getting more expensive, and you realize that also the pension that you're saving up is probably not going to be worth anything by the time that you're 60.
Yeah.
It can be really daunting and be like, what am I doing this all for? Like, why not just do something radical? But then Bitcoin comes along and all of a sudden it gives you like this, it's like, holy shit, all of a sudden I'm holding this thing that's here. It's not going to be diluted, and as it adopts it, the price has to go up.
Yeah.
I don't know, it just provides some rest, and it makes you rethink your life and what's important, what you can do. It gives you like feed to dream again.
Yeah.
At least in my case. So that's pretty powerful.
Exactly. I totally agree with that. You shouldn't have to worry about these boom bust cycles. And once Bitcoin gets more adopted, then you won't have to worry about that even within Bitcoin. It'll be a lot more stable, and people will be able to price things in Bitcoin. It'll be the unit of account. And I think that's what's really important. So basically, at the end of it, not your keys, not your coins. Enjoy these low prices. You know what isn't fungible? Gold. The world's richest nations are banning gold imports from Russia. That is from CNN Business. Pretty insane stuff. Let's see. US President Joe Biden announced Sunday that the United States will ban Russian gold, the country's second most valuable export after energy. Gold exports were worth 12.6 billion pounds, $15.5 billion to the Russian economy in 2021, according to the UK government. Biden and fellow G7 leaders are currently meeting in Germany to discuss new ways of punishing the government of President Vladimir Putin over the invasion of Ukraine, while trying to limit the fallout on a stressed global economy. Quote, the United States has imposed unprecedented costs on Putin to deny him the revenue he needs to fund his war against Ukraine, Biden said in a tweet on Sunday. Together, the G7 will announce that we will ban the import of Russian gold, a major export that rakes in tens of billions of dollars for Russia, he added. So, it looks like gold is no longer fungible. 1 ounce of gold does not equal 1 ounce of gold.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
In
it
the
does.
commodity world.
Yeah, it does. I'm no gold expert, but I think that I don't see it as an effective means at all. I think it's like the G7 is like, they're trying to destroy the Russian economy and the ruble. Instead, the ruble has gone up against almost every currency in the world.
Yep.
As far as I know, Russia has more gold today than it ever had in its history. So they might be selling some gold, but they have a large pile of gold. And the joke is the G7 is nothing, right? We've got the G7 or the G20, it's still a small number. Those are the only ones that are supporting this move. So we've got China, is buying gold from Russia. We've got India buying gold from Russia. South American countries, they're not part of this. The entire continent of South America and Africa are not supporting these measures.
So what you're saying is you don't ban Russian gold. You can only ban yourself from Russian gold.
Yeah, and then there's this thing, right? All right, send the gold to China. We melt it down there. We make new ingots out of it, and we sell it on to the rest of the world. So Russia might need to give China a little discount, and China can profit from the difference, and they'll get it out to the market. But as I understand it, Russia's buying more gold than they're selling.
So this brings
notice how they mentioned the 15 billion number, that Russia sells 15 billion worth of gold per year.
Yeah.
How much of that, they put this number in it as if they're now like going to block that 15 billion. I bet you they're not going to get close to that number of like shrinking that number.
Yeah.
That's my take on it.
I agree. I think it's just futile. The United States is trying to do everything it can, and we're just realizing that it doesn't matter, that they're going to figure a way around it. Russia, they've, just like you said, we put all these sanctions on Russia, and the ruble went up 42% against the dollar since the beginning of the war in Ukraine. So it's not worked. And the other thing, this is the question that all of this bodes, which, a lot of Bitcoiners debate, and a lot of people debate this. When there's no central entity over money, when we go to a Bitcoin standard, what happens when you have issues like this and you can't put a sanction on someone because it's decentralized money? So you can't put a sanction on a country. What do you do if you know that there's some black market thing that everyone agrees is really bad, some ring, I don't know, something that's really bad, and you don't want it to happen, and you know how to cut off their funds to stop it? That's what happens in today's world sometimes. But in a Bitcoinized world, you can't. Once you do that, then you set a precedent where you can do that for anything, and then you will do that. So how do you make sure that Bitcoin always stays fungible and that 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin? I guess that's the question.
So who's still buying fossil fuels from Russia? I know I'm kind of going over your question of the
Yes.
fungibility,
Yeah.
but I mean, this is a lot more than 15 billion worth of gold. This is fossil fuels, crude oil, coal, you name it. And look who's on top. China, okay, you know, we know they've been a supporter of Russia. But look who's on top then. Germany, Italy, the Netherlands. The freaking country I'm
All
in
the
right
same
now.
countries.
The Netherlands only has 17 million people in its economy, and look how much they're buying. It even
Yeah.
says here, the Netherlands received 79 crude oil marine shipments from Russia, more than double those received by any other country. It's you know, we're living in a world that's so entangled. You know, we're also dependent on resources from around the world. Last couple of decades, that has been the goal, right? It was like, it's been celebrated, like to go global, and you know, there is never going to be a world war again, which is actually really efficient. And if we do it well, and if there are no wars, but unfortunately, you know, human nature hasn't changed, and people want to dominate. So yeah.
Yeah. I think obviously you can't stop this, right? People are going to continue to buy energy from Russia, especially because they tried to virtue signal and say, oh, we don't need this energy here to produce the energy in our country. But then they didn't stop using the energy. They just started buying it from other countries and calling those countries bad. But other countries aren't bad for producing energy. You need to have energy for humanity to succeed and for humanity to progress. It's how it's always been. And so, yeah, maybe you need to change the source. Maybe you don't. But I think it would be good to look at, you know, to have some, before you stop producing energy, have an alternative ready. And I think that's what a lot of these countries in the EU didn't do. They just said, we're going to stop producing energy. We're going to back ourselves into a corner. And that's exactly what they did. And Russia knew that. And so that then it was easy for Russia to invade Ukraine, because it knew that all these countries that were going to think about sanctioning Russia were dependent upon Russia for energy. So they knew that there was nothing they could do anyway.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
continuing on with the theme of the 2020s is inflation. That is what we've seen so far. So there's this article that says Lebanon inflation rate surges to 211%. Economist Steve Henke recommends a currency board. Yeah, he would want one of those. Dumb guy.
A quick question in between, right? Because I think that should be part of Bitcoiner's guide as well. Bitcoin.com, isn't that owned by Roger Ver, the Bitcoin cash shill?
Yeah, don't use, I know I'm on bitcoin.com right now.
No, it doesn't matter, because you know, there's always information to be found also.
Yes.
You know, but you just got to be aware of, you know, and there's more of these websites, you know, that are often owned by big exchanges. I don't know if it was CoinMarketCap or but always just be aware, what website are you on, who owns this, and who's shilling what, you know, because sometimes it's more of an elaborate, hey, there's some really interesting article, but there's all these links trying to funnel you into, you know, their funnel, whatever their funnel is. Yeah.
So ladies and gentlemen, even though I'm using bitcoin.com, use it at your own discretion, and watch out for the scammers, especially the Bitcoin Cash scammers. They suck.
But even though this article is quoting Steve Hanke, and we know he's a reliable source, if you go to the top.
Yeah, he wants a currency.
This article just scores like all the red flags.
I know, but it's good. It's good to talk about it, right? You can't
So tell
be
us
a
about Steve
Bitcoiner.
Hanke, quick. What if I say Steve Hanke? What do you think?
Oh, he's your ultimate Keynesian economist. He believes that there should be some inflation, He thinks that currency should be centralized. And then he thinks that countries in South America and Central America, because they speak Spanish, that they're all drug pushing countries. That's what he thinks. So I'm not going to say he's a racist, but the dude he's not very smart. His first principle is he doesn't come from good first principles. Let's put it that way. Keynesian.
Yeah, Keynesian is definitely a good way to describe it. And you know, one of the Bitcoin dinosaurs, that's how I see it. You know, like
Yeah.
that meteorite coming for him.
He's the old guy that's always yelling at Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So
that's very, very memeable. That's fun.
Let's look at this and we can dissect it a little bit. It says black market in fuel driving inflation. The inflation rate in crisis-torn Lebanon surged to 211% in May, making it the 23rd consecutive time the consumer price index has surged, the report has said. The revelation of the latest inflation figure comes as the country's politicians reportedly struggle to form a new government more than a month after parliamentary elections. According to a national news report, the politicians' failure to create a new government is delaying the implementation of key reforms that allow Lebanon to receive a $3 billion bailout from the IMF. The report also quotes a note from Byblos Bank that attempts to reveal factors likely to be worsening the inflation situation. The note asserts the inability of the authorities to monitor and contain retail prices, as well as the fluctuation of the Lebanese pound's exchange rate on the parallel market and the gradual lifting of subsidies on hydrocarbons, have encouraged opportunistic wholesalers and retailers to raise the prices of consumer goods disproportionately. So, Keynesians.
Doesn't that kill you that they always like blame opportunistic businessmen?
Yes. They blame demand, or they blame these greedy corporations. You think greedy corporations can raise prices 211%?
Dude, it's just like
it's not the greedy corporations. The root cause of inflation is money printing. But Keynesians they'll go to their graves saying that we need better central control. We need more government. We need more people, like more government deciding how to put in price controls and all these things. What they don't realize is that the issue is the money printing, and the issue is that you can't have one central entity control prices for a whole market, for a whole economy, because there's too many things that the central government doesn't know about inside of an economy, and you have to let the free market decide.
It's always a free market deciding, right? I mean, any businessman knows, and any businessman will ask the price he can get for it. That's always the case. That's that's nothing new.
Yeah. So, and the thing is too that not only will they ask the price you can get for it, but if your supply chain, if those costs increase, then you have to raise your prices.
Yeah.
So
anyway, the money is broken, and that's why everything's inflating. It's basically their currency is just going to shit.
Yes.
Yeah, and the products in the market are still valuable. And them raising prices is not because their goods have become less valuable. No, it's because their currency has become less valuable, and they need to add more units to it to try and compensate for this failing currency. So yeah, luckily they can escape to Bitcoin. I know it's not possible for everybody, and even in countries like Lebanon right now, I think the dollar is king, or the euro. I mean, anybody would love to hold euros or dollars right now. Or anything that's not hyperinflating at 200% on an annual basis. That's like, that's literally things are 3 times more expensive.
Here's the thing is we read that article, you're in the Netherlands, I'm in the United States, and most people in our countries, what do they say? Oh, that's Lebanon. That could never happen here. That's what they think. That's what we collectively as a group, just living in the West, that we think, Oh yeah, inflation's high right now. It's at 8% here in the US. It's around the same in the UK and in the EU. But 211% inflation, that could never happen here. And that's the biggest fallacy. It's the biggest lie that we tell ourselves, that we think,
Yeah.
oh, that's Lebanon. That's a country I know nothing about. And that can totally happen here where we are. And it will happen because that's the path that we're headed on. And the path is inevitable at this point. So it's just simple math. As you continue to print more and more, it just snowballs. And as the great Greg Foss says, you're going to see a lot of these currencies blowing up that aren't in the G7 or the G20. You're going to see them blowing up like in Lebanon. But they're all crack houses. It's just that the US dollar is the best crack house on the block. But it's still a crack house, and it's still going to blow up, and it's just a sham. But it's going to take a little bit more time than these other ones. So speaking of these trends that are happening, Sven Henrich, who also known as Northman Trader, one of your favorites, Marcus.
I like the guy, yeah, because well, he's a trader.
Yeah.
So I put out a tweet when he said that I'm gonna wait for August and then Bitcoin should be around 20K, and then I'm gonna go like ape shit crazy into it.
Yeah.
And I retweeted that because he tweeted that out in January, and I retweeted and I said, "Oh, I hope he gets wrecked and we're gonna be sitting at 120K." But yeah, I mean,
He's looking right.
Yep.
He says, so he put out this chart, and if you're listening on audio, he tweeted, he said, one more rate hike and we're at or exceeding the historic Fed capitulation trend as the ever increasing debt construct brings about a recession, and the Fed has to intervene. By what? By cutting rates. So he put this graph out, and it's basically a chart, and it shows.
Slow it down, Sean, because this always gets really complicated. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
What are we seeing on the chart for the people who are not really good like chart readers?
Yeah.
I'm seeing like at least two lines. A blue line that I believe is the interest rate.
We're looking at the federal funds rate, which is the blue line, and it has its ups and downs, but it's
so
trending.
It starts in the 70s when it was really high, about like
In the
15%
1970s
on average.
Yes.
Yeah. It's on the right axis, I believe.
Exactly. And he goes from 1990. So there's also a red line, which is the total public debt, which goes up and up and up and up. It's this red line that goes up and up.
It
Then
looks
he
like the
has,
balance sheet.
Yep, the balance sheet. Then he has this straight line, which is trending over the federal funds rate from 1990 till today. From 1990 till today, it basically goes, it's an average and it's heading downward. And what it's measuring is every time the Fed capitulates. That's the term that he used, right? Or that a lot of people will say it turns course, or the Fed pivots, it's capitulating, whatever you want to call it. It goes from raising rates, the Fed does, and then they go, you know what? We've raised it as high as we can, and actually we have to turn course. We're capitulating. We have to drop rates. And so with this red line that goes down to the right, it's touching every top point, and those highs are getting lower and lower and lower every single time the Fed capitulates. So in his calculation, he's saying the Fed has one more rate hike that it can do, and then it'll have to capitulate, or it'll have to cut rates. It'll have to pivot. So this is an interesting thing to be watching. I think next month or the month after, the Fed is planning on, I think the next month in July, the Fed's planning on raising rates again. So this actually could be right in line with what Sven Henrich has been saying. is if the Fed raises rates one more month, one more time in July, and then in August rolls around and they go, you know what? We made a mistake. And we're going into a recession. We can't be raising rates more and more into a recession because that might take us to a depression. Then they might turn course, might capitulate and lower rates. And once they lower rates, that's when things like Bitcoin explode in price. So this is something to really watch. What's kind of your take on it, Marcus?
There's something else I'm noticing in that. Well, there's always something I really struggle with, I'll be completely honest, and that's like this Fed fund rate.
Yeah.
It's a rate they set, and at the same time, there's like, rates that you and I pay when we borrow at a bank, right? Or when we take out a mortgage, and that's not the same rate. So at the same time, I'm hearing also that like mortgage rates are going up, so that allows the Fed to raise rates a little bit. So, like I don't know the intricacies about that, but what's obvious is that, since the 70s, what the fuck happened in 1971, you see like this interest rate just trending towards zero, and it has like these short revivals that it goes up a little bit. And as you can see here, it like this trend line that Sven drew. Whenever it seems to reach that trend line, it seems to be critical, because we know the last time they lowered rates, it was because the system was breaking, like banks were literally failing, or, you got like these spikes in the LIBOR or interbank lending rates and stuff. They were like blowing off, and then the Fed had to step in to provide liquidity because the banks weren't trusting each other anymore. So what I see here as well, if you put like your cursor on every time that interest rates hit that trend line from Sven, when they reverse course, and I look at the red line, the balance sheet, you see like an increase of the slope of the balance sheet right after they reverse course, and that is literally like QE or monetary expansion or money printer go brrr, right? That's when the Fed just creates magically out of thin air enormous and vast amounts of money. And then during the last time, they even handed out that money to people, creating like this wealth out of nowhere, where people actually turn that fake wealth into like Amazon buy orders for stuff that they don't need, or to fix up their yard. And all of a sudden, like the online e-commerce websites, that sell real world goods got flooded with requests, and we ended up with all these supply chain issues and stuff. So the Fed is like creating enormous disruptions and weird stuff. And I mean, look at the money supply. That red line is just scary to me, because if if our money is expanding at this rate, who's getting it? Because I'm not getting it. My salary hasn't been expanding in that fashion at all. So I'm just being completely diluted here. That's all I'm seeing. It's like, oh my God, I wish I could overlay the Bitcoin issuance schedule over this and be like, okay, which one do you rather hold? The one on the left or the one on the right? It's pretty obvious.
Yeah, and something interesting too is like so he even includes here that the Fed has a target of 3.8%, which looks about twice as much as the historical trend is going towards. So the Fed's target, I mean, it looks like he's saying there's no way they reach their target, which the target that they have now, 3.8%, is even higher than in 2019 when the Fed reversed course, which was before COVID. It reversed course, and then COVID hit, and then it dropped to zero. So that's really interesting that they have a target that's even higher than what they could even get to back in 2019 before any COVID happened. So all of this is just really interesting to watch. And I'm not sure if you listened to Preston Pish on what Bitcoin did this last week. I thought he did a really good job. It was called the title was like it's
showing the slides and stuff.
And he mentioned that you're gonna see a big price increase in Bitcoin, and he thinks it's going to be in the next 12 months. He thinks 12 months is like in the next 12 months is a long time frame. So he thinks maybe the next 6 to 12 months that you're going to see a massive amount of QE coming in. And he's talking about, he said, you're going to see that the Fed will say 5 trillion to 10 trillion, stimulus that they're going to put out.
So we're going to go from like roughly 23, oh no, what is the number right now? About 30 trillion, millions of dollars on the left axis there. Where we're at now, we're going to grow to like 35 trillion.
35 to 40 trillion.
Yeah.
So that is what is interesting to watch right now. All of this going on, and it does play into the macro does affect Bitcoin. It still does, because it affects the price of Bitcoin. It doesn't affect the underlying fundamentals network of Bitcoin. But these macro things affect it because it's all about the trust in the money. And as the Fed, if they don't hit their federal funds target, if they turn course too early, if they start printing money, then just more and more people lose trust in the dollar. They look for a better solution, and they learn about Bitcoin. And then this cycle continues to repeat and repeat and repeat. I mean, that's what I learned about. That's when I really.
Well, this cycle cannot repeat and repeat and repeat, because if you look at this chart, that red line from Sven again, the one pointing down from left to right, it seems to hit like the 0 level in about 2025, 2026. If I like extend it a little bit, that means it's gonna go like below 0 and just be negative. And we've seen negative rates in Germany and stuff, but you can't, in my opinion, like math is broken if like or we're like in this weird construct of like negative interest rates on a global scale, which means if you put your money in the bank, it costs you money to put it there. That must be a point, surely, that's something just like that it all like finally stops working, right? At some point, you can't, like when you get to absolute 0, the atoms is not moving anymore. Like you can't move negatively, right? I mean, so something's got to break, something's got to blow up. So either the interest rates will blow up like back to like 12, 15%, or maybe even like extreme highs at some point. But what does that mean for like the balance sheet and stuff? It might have exploded upwards, or it just doesn't matter anymore because it's just not worth anything anymore. And that's a scary thought as well, because what happens if like the Western world goes bankrupt and all of a sudden the government really doesn't have any funds anymore that they can pay their population, their staff?
This is
because the dollars are just lying in the street and the trust is gone and it's not worth anything anymore. Then how does the government fund itself? How do you see that?
This is why it's so important to get Bitcoin, to get a transition to Bitcoin before this all blows up, which I don't think can happen. It would be awesome if it could. If we could onboard onto a Bitcoinized world before hyperinflation, but the governments would have to either relinquish power, which they're just not willing to do, or the people would have to study money, which they're also not willing to do. So
they got to get rid of some debt. They got to start like actually spend less than they earn. And like export more than you import, and like go through some hard times and try to bring the balance sheet back down or control it. Or
it's gonna be hard for everybody.
But that seems to be like the most ludicrous idea, to actually spend within your means. It's
I know.
Weird.
You're gonna have to have like food storage. There's gonna be supply shortages, so you have to be ready for that.
I can't oversee what it will mean if it all blows up. I really have no idea. I mean, you could look at Lebanon, what it's doing over there. You could look at Turkey, that's also like hyperinflating or close to it. Argentina has done it a couple of times.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is, though, just to stay on the positive side, humans themselves are really resilient, right?
Yes.
I mean, we have this capability of reorganizing and setting up new structures, but sometimes stuff needs to break to be able to replace an old broken structure for something new, and I think that breaking point has to be reached at some point, and hopefully it won't be too painful, and hopefully having Bitcoin there will make us even it will make it easier for us to be resilient.
Yeah. And the
And
whole thing is, you never want to sell your Bitcoin through all of it. Because no, I mean,
if you miss like the first hour of the show, all you need to remember is never sell your Bitcoin. That's what it all comes down to.
but I'm thinking like,
buy some more. Do it right now. Open your app.
It's
Just
gonna hit a
do a little
point where
smash
people.
buy.
It's gonna hit a point where you're thinking, man, my Bitcoin's gone up so much, I should sell it, and then you end up selling all your Bitcoin, and then it goes down, right? Oh, Bitcoin's dead. This is the time that it's dead for sure, and it's not, right? It's gonna do. This is like the whole. All your models are broken. All the models that we've had before for Bitcoin, for fiat, for stocks, whatever you've thought about, it's broken. All you have to realize is that Bitcoin's going up forever. And while it's going up forever, it's going to be insanely volatile, and it's going to make you think you're crazy. So you just have to sit back and go, I'm not selling it. I listen to Bitcoiner's Guide. I listen to Sean and Marcus. So we're not selling. Like,
that was one of the most crazy charts of Preston Pish when he compared it, when he overlaid it to like that Weimar volatility, like volatility is going to increase probably, like Bitcoin, like if you have to believe that graph, if we would see like a repeat of that, like that'd be like a 30x up and then like another 90% drop and then like a 50x up.
That's what I've been saying. I showed that chart on Bitcoiner's Guide a few weeks ago.
All right. Right here?
I guess, yes, on Bitcoiner's Guide, I showed that chart.
It was probably like a late episode here in Europe. Like I was half falling asleep.
It was the one where you and me had the great debate, the great Bitcoin super cycle debate.
Yeah, I remember now. You're right. Sorry.
You didn't win that one yet. You haven't won that one. We're still in the super cycle.
Yeah. I agree. We're in the super cycle. Bitcoin is the super cycle.
Yes.
But yeah, it's nothing but words if you don't elaborate on what you consider a super cycle. I mean, for the people who thought this last year was going to be super cycle, they're like, well, 70K wasn't that super. You guys promised me 100K to 600K. That would have been a super cycle. Did 70K. We're not in a super cycle. And then you'll be like, yeah, Bitcoin has been in a bull run since 2009, baby. Just zoom out. It's just one big number. Look how it's going up. And we're still in like the early adopters phase, so once like the early majority starts coming in, which I honestly believe we're already in right now. I think we're at the beginning stages of the early majority. I think this last cycle was
Frieza said on the Meme Factory podcast that we were in the early innovators.
Yeah, which comes before that, which is like the last the first 2.5% roughly.
Yeah, it's early innovators and early adopters, then early majority.
I think we're past the early innovators.
So you think we're early majority or early adopters?
Come again? I pull up the chart. Can you Google it? Because I believe it's like you have like the 2 standard deviations, so you get the 2.5%. Those are the innovators, right? Those are like your nerds and your programmers who only get it. Then you have the early adopters, and then the early majority, if I'm not mistaken.
Let's see. Okay, let me share this.
I have to keep thinking of my friend who says like, dude, I have trouble reading charts. Like, what does this mean, right? For the people who don't understand this chart, or are not familiar with reading charts or with statistics or whatever,
Okay, so you,
Basically, this curve represents all the people in the world, spread out from left to right. So 50% of the population will be on the left side. If you can just point out that middle line there, Sean.
yes,
Yeah, so we got half of the population to the left. They're basically early, right? And everybody to the right is late.
they,
And the really early ones were only a small number of people. That's why the line starts low.
was it
And you,
Krisis said that we are still in the innovators stage.
yeah, yeah. So he's saying, 2%, 1% adoption worldwide. So we're in the innovator stage.
Yes.
I I personally think that's a little bit, too optimistic. And maybe you're not, because then you're calculating like, okay, how many Bitcoiners are there now? And how many people are there in the world? And I divide that number over each other, and then I get about like a 2% number, right? But that's not entirely fair because, you got to, first of all, correct the total population for the people who are, like kids,
Mhm.
they don't count. But the biggest
Yeah, they do,
issue
because
is,
kids are gonna grow up and they're gonna be adults in 15 years.
no, because we could then also like people that are old are going to be dead, and I don't
Yeah,
want those
they
either.
replace the old people.
Okay, so the kids will have some too, but the point being is that, okay, adoption isn't just people, it's also adoption of wealth, right? I mean, let's say you live in a village and there's this one millionaire living in the village and the rest of the village is like very poor, right? Like they're like practically living off the land. You can have that one millionaire adopt Bitcoin, right? And the price shoots up. And you have 1% adoption, But what happens when the other rest of
Okay.
the village
Well,
joins in, but they hardly have any money? So then the price doesn't really move anymore.
so we are.
What I'm saying is that like adoption amongst investors and traders and the rich population, the wealthy population, is higher than 2.5%.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
We're not even
If
at.
you look at all the people who own all the stocks in the world, and you ask those people, do you own any Bitcoin? You're gonna get a number that's way higher than 2.5%.
Yeah,
It's
but
like 20%.
you're talking about wealth right now. You're talking about wealth, right?
Yes.
That's what you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about percentage, we're talking about wealth. Just looking
It's a
purely at the
percentage too.
numbers.
You multiply the individual times his net worth, basically.
No, this is how you do it. What is the market cap of Bitcoin?
Right now?
Yes.
Well, like at 50, it's a $1 trillion market cap. So we're like less than 500,
We're at 400 billion.
400 billion. Yeah.
$400 billion market cap right now. What's the total? What's the total addressable market of Bitcoin? What's all
But
the
you're denominating it in US dollars.
So we could denominate anything.
All right. So at current, so not accounting for inflation and all that stuff, you mean? What could it go to? That's what you mean? Okay. So you're saying,
Is it at 2.5% or less of the total addressable market that we think it'll get to?
yeah, that's another way of looking at it.
Right? Because so say the total addressable market of store of value is 500 trillion.
500 trillion. That's a lot. Yeah.
Is that right? Or is that wrong?
I don't know. Yeah, around whether it's 100 trillion or 500 trillion doesn't matter, I guess.
If it's 500 trillion,
it doesn't matter. It's only, it's in that order of magnitude. Like
say it's
hundreds
400
of trillions.
trillion. 400
Hundreds
trillion.
of trillions.
You think it's what?
We're in the order of magnitude of hundreds of trillions of dollars. So it doesn't really matter so much whether it's 100 or 400.
Okay,
It
so
matters more if it's like 10 trillion or 100 trillion or 1,000 trillion. you know.
Yeah. So if it's 400 trillion and you're in the first 2.5%, that's $1 trillion market cap as the innovators. So technically,
So 1% would be for
no,
4
2.5%.
trillion.
2.5% would equal 1 trillion of a 400 trillion total addressable market store of value for Bitcoin. But you got to remember that Bitcoin is
No, but that's not right. But that's not right. 400 trillion US dollars. What is 1% of 400 trillion?
No, what's 2.5% of 400 trillion?
You tell me.
1 trillion. Do 400 times point. 400 times 0.0025 is 1. So 400 trillion times 2.5% is $1 trillion. Have you done, those are the numbers.
Right, why am I getting stuck on this? Like now, now I'm gonna look like an idiot doing math on screen. But if I take 1% of 400 trillion US dollars, that's $4 trillion.
No, we're talking about early innovators. Look right here, early innovators.
Yeah, but I think you're missing the decimal spot,
2.5%.
Sean.
What?
I think you're missing a decimal spot.
Am I?
Because it's $10 trillion, 2.5%.
Oh, it's 10 trillion. Well, even you're right. You're right. 10 trillion. That's what you were saying.
Yeah. So
yes, my
I
bad.
think you're proving my point. So
no, that proves my point even more. 2.5%.
Yeah.
2.5% of 400 trillion is 10 trillion. So until Bitcoin is at gold's market cap, we're in
we're at half of a percent, according to your reasoning, that if you take the total addressable market, which is $400 trillion,
yes,
it would make 1 trillion, 1%. If we're at the 1% of adoption, that means we're at $4 trillion, but we're not at $4 trillion yet. We're at $500 billion roughly.
Yeah. So 0.5%. So according to Creases, he is correct. And according to you,
Yeah.
if you said the wealth, because you said it's about the wealth, we have a village full of people that are poor and one person's worth $1 million.
Yeah.
And Michael Saylor always said that too. He said, you get onto Facebook, you get Howard Marks on Facebook. Well, he can only be one user of Facebook, but he can drop $1 billion onto the Bitcoin network. So in all of these things that we're thinking about, penetration, we are in the innovator stage still, as far as wealth is.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. So innovators are not, I guess, yeah, okay, fair enough. So what you'll get like in the laggards will probably be like the pension funds or the late majority, maybe. That's when all the big money starts going in.
Someone has to buy Bitcoin when it's $1 million to push it back, push it up to 10 million, right?
So that's kind of cool. So Bitcoin is moving that slow, and it's that volatile and dangerous for like these bigger, wealthy institutions and wealth managers and whatever not to put anything in.
Yeah, and
that us plebs get to be innovators. Even like the complete morons get to be innovators right now, just by being early. Yeah.
Essentially, until Bitcoin is at gold's market cap, we're in the innovator stage. We're not even in the early adopter stage. If 400 trillion is the amount, is like the store of value, monetary premium that Bitcoin can get.
Yeah. So if we're at the 0.5%,
we're like
we still have 5 times as long to go before we get to the early adopter stage.
No, because
so it's going to take 5 times 10 years. So in 50 years, we're going to be
No. This is S-curve adoption.
Yeah, show us the S
Sure.
curve, because when you Google search it, you also saw some images of the S curve
S-curve or
overlaid with
J-curve.
this. Yeah, but the S curve is basically just that right half. You got to invert that right part of the. Anyway, I can't point on your screen. No.
So this is what's funny is that, people say, oh, well, Bitcoin, it's not money because it's taken 13 years. It's taken too long, and it's not money yet. And that's kind of like what we're saying. But at the same time, it's the fastest asset to $1 trillion. So if you think about like how slow it's going, it's actually going the fastest in modern history that any asset's ever been monetized. Faster than anything else, but it feels slow. So you got to have low time preference.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of people come into Bitcoin because they think they can get rich quick, right? Yeah, I'm going to do 100x or 10x in like a year or 6 months or whatever. And that's a reason why they never got into stocks, because when they get promised like a 6 to 10% return on average per year, they're like, oh, okay, so if I get $1,000, I'm going to make like $100 in a year. It's like, forget it. It's like, and they don't appreciate like the compounding effects like over the long term, right? So they never end up saving anything for later because it's just too slow, and they don't, they're like, forget it, they lose interest. Bitcoin speeds this up. So it is like you said, it does it really fast. You get like a doubling in Bitcoin in a way shorter time frame on average. Let me add that, on average. But you're still going to have to hold Bitcoin for years and years and years, and you're going to get like massively outsized return.
Yes.
Yeah, doublings is what it's about. How often can you double?
Enjoy these,
your Bitcoin stack.
enjoy these prices because they won't last for long. That's the final story. They will not last for long. Okay, well, I think that does it for today for Bitcoiners Guide. Remember,
we always give them too much, Sean. We gotta dose it.
Yeah, we do give too much signal, too much alpha for these fools, for these bears that watch. Okay, reminder, BTC Sessions joins the Meme Factory podcast this Thursday, 7:30 p.m. live on our YouTube channel. Do not miss this episode, the same channel as you're listening to right now. And remember, what you see here, what you hear here, when you leave here, don't just let it stay here. Please share, like, subscribe. If you learned something, you found information, put a comment. You liked my math, if you hated my math, I know I messed up today, but we figured it out at the end, and we're in the innovator stage, which is awesome. If you thought that was cool, share it around. We would really appreciate it. And as for Bitcoiners Guide, episode 19 from Plan Marcus, that Big Sean.